Welcome to the Contrarians, and tonight we are having yet another Dark Horse album episode. Tonight we're looking at the 1983 album from Genesis, the Shapes cover. You know what this is. This is that whole Phil Collins era. So we've got a panel here. We're going to talk about it, rate it. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Contrarians, and tonight is yet another Dark Horse album episode. Tonight we are looking at the 1983 album from Genesis. Well, Genesis, the Shapes cover, whatever you want to call it, the 1983 album. So we've got a Patreon subscriber panel here. We've got Todd Evans, Bill Schuster, and Tate Davis. And Martin's here joining me on this discussion. So yeah, we're going to take a look at the 1983 album from Genesis. This was the 12th studio album, released October of 83. Came out on Charisma and Virgin in the UK and Atlantic here. This is the Phil Collins lineup. Some people like it, some people don't. I'm not going to tell you how I feel about it, but I think Todd Evans already knows how I feel about this record. But I don't know. Let's get started. I think we'll just go, I guess I'll just go clockwise. Todd, Bill, Tate, and then Martin, and we'll come back to me. So let's do a ranking like we do on all the Dark Horse series. Let's do a ranking out of 10. Okay. Todd, we're going to start off with you. Just give your thoughts about the record, tracks you like, your rating out of 10. We'll compile it at the end. And, well, everyone knows how it works. So I want to welcome everybody here tonight, and let's get started. Todd Evans.
Okay. So Genesis is the self-titled album. I remember the thing that was always difficult for me was it's very easy to separate Mama from this album because it came out before, and it actually came out in this form in both the UK and the United States, and probably
I've got
other places.
That, Todd. I've got that 12-inch. Yeah.
Yeah, it says the long version of Mama, which I believe is just the album version, and then it's got a version of It's Gonna Get Better on the other side, which is actually extended. But the thing about it is I think a lot of people think about this album and they think about That's All, and they think about, Home by the Sea and Taking It All Too Hard and Illegal Alien. And they kind of forget about Mama. And the thing about Mama is Mama's a crazy, weird song. I mean, it really is. I mean, when it came out, it kind of blew me away. I mean, I discovered Genesis when I was in my early college years, and it was Abacab was the most recent album. So this was my first Genesis album that was like a new album that I waited for. And I mean, Mama's a very strange, very unique song. And it started out, I mean, Hugh Padgham played the Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five song, The Message, during the sessions, and there's a laugh in that. And when you listen to that song, the laugh isn't really quite as crazy as the one that Phil does. But Phil thought it was funny and just started doing it. And then the other guys were like, you should try to put that in a song. And but I mean, it's not just the laugh. That song is just the way it's put together. I just really love it. It's got that thing that Genesis had started doing by that point. They did it on Keep It Dark on the album before that. And before that, it was Turn It On Again, where they start the song with like a drum pattern, and then once the rest of the band comes in, where you thought was one is not really one. It sort of kind of turns it on its head. And I think that's a great rhythmic trick for a band to do. And so it starts out like that, and the lyric is really dark. And then when Tony comes in with his chords, they're really, really dark and kind of sinister sounding. And even what Mike Rutherford's playing, Mike Rutherford's usually the light, kind of poppy guy during this era of Genesis. And even what Mike is playing on the guitar is kind of weird. But I just think Mama is an epic song. And so I think when you think about this album, you have to remember that it starts with Mama. And I think maybe some folks just go to That's All and Illegal Alien and stuff like that. But That's All is this kind of song that when it came out, it was really uncool to like That's All. Uh, Everybody was people in that I knew were kind of like, oh, That's All is just kind of a Genesis. Yeah, there you go. That's got a great version of Bertha Fifth on the other side. Um, but but That's All is something that I started to really enjoy a lot more when I got older. And it's just a great melody. The Tony Banks piano on it is just really excellent, and the song is just it's just a really good song. Melodically, it's just a really good song. And so I think, when I was younger, I didn't really like That's All that much, but I actually really like it now. Home by the Sea and Second Home by the Sea, those are really that's a really great pairing of tracks where you've got there's a song the first part of the song is a song, and the second part is an instrumental kind of more proggier thing with the Simmons drums. And they did that again on the next album. They did In the Glow of the Night and The Last Domino. And so I think they really liked that concept. But Home by the Sea, the way the parts fit together are really nice. Again, I'm kind of a Tony Banks fanboy, so I'm going to say this a lot, but what Tony's playing is really great. And it's very the way the parts fit together, I think, is innovative. And the second half, Second Home by the Sea, is pretty intense. One of Mike Rutherford's best guitar solos. And one of the things I think where Home by the Sea, one of the things I don't really like about Home by the Sea and also Mama is that over the years, Phil spent a lot of time talking about what those songs were about. And you kind of hear the story kind of over and over again about Home by the Sea is people buy this house and the ghosts are there and the ghosts are telling them, you're going to sit down and you're going to listen to our story. And then Mama is supposed to be about a brothel, and and you hear that's what it's really about so much that I think those songs actually work better when you don't think about what they're really about and you just kind of get into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents about side one. Tony Banks once said that he thought of the meat of the album as the side one, and that side two were the character pieces. And I always thought that was really interesting. Illegal Alien, a really good song. It's very difficult to. I don't want to give him too hard of a time about it because I don't really believe that it was meant to be disrespectful. But at the same time, when you listen to it, there is really quite a few cringeworthy kinds of lines in the song. But I don't think that there was any intention there. Tony Banks has come out and said in interviews that there wasn't any disrespectful or racist intention, and I don't think there was either. I just think that it's some of the stuff is kind of unfortunate. Very strange video. It's very strange. I've always thought that Phil sang it in a character voice. I remember that if you think about that video, one of the things that they do in the video, and I don't know what this is based on, but the characters in the video are wearing like clothespins on their clothes. And one of the souvenir items, I looked for it and I couldn't find it. But one of the souvenir items that year during that tour was a clothespin and had the Genesis logo on one side and it said Illegal Alien on the other side. And I thought that was so bizarre. And I didn't buy one, but I found one in a puddle of soda. And I've kept it all these years and I was looking for it, but I couldn't find it. But I think song-wise, Illegal Alien's pretty good.
Yeah, I have no problems with it.
Yeah. Taking it all, I think it kind of becomes a punching bag for this album, and I don't really think that's fair. But at the same time, I kind of understand why that happens. Taking It All Too Hard is probably it's a pretty solid ballad, but I think they got better, a little bit better than that with the next album and the albums after that. But it's got a pretty nice feel to it. Just a Job to Do is kind of like one of the R&B influence kinds of songs, like No Reply at All, except for they used Tony's keys instead of the Earth, Wind, and Fire horns, which I'm not sure whether that was like a scheduling or logistical issue, or whether they just decided that they were going to try it on their own. But you can tell when you listen to that track that it's kind of the same kind of thing. Silver Rainbow, I thought it was interesting that Tony Banks once said that the working title of that song was Adam, because they thought it sounded like something that Adam Ant would do. And they thought that the lyric was really kind of childish and playful. And so they made the music kind of feel that way. Although even that song, I think Tony's keyboard textures are kind of dark and kind of spooky. And it's going to get better. The thing that I always think of when I think about it's going to get better is there was a interview with them at the time where it was one of those rock line things where people could call up and ask questions, and somebody said, "Mike, what are you playing?" And it's going to get better. And they were referring to the synth pedals, the bass pedals, and because obviously he's not playing electric bass. And Mike Rutherford says, "A Stratocaster, a nice blue one." And Tony Banks interrupts him and says, "I think he means the bass." But that's a really, I think it's going to get better as a really innovative track. And I think the synth bass really is something that they really hadn't tried before in that kind of way. And again, Tony Banks coming in with some kind of really kind of eerie and pretty innovative keyboard sounds. And so if you can't tell, I really like this album. I even like the cover. And usually when I tell people I like the cover of this album,
I don't dig the cover.
People roll their eyes or look down at the ground. But the cover was done by Bill Smith's studio. And Bill Smith was an artist who started out. He designed a bunch of album covers for the Jam. And then he moved on and he designed a bunch of he did this. Currently, he took the photograph of his kids' toys. And the Bill Smith studio also did a bunch of Marillion albums and King Crimson Thrak. So for a while there in the 80s and 90s, that was a really he was kind of a sought after guy. But I like the fact that the logo looks a little bit generic, and they kind of stuck with that, because if you look at the American version, doesn't have a picture label. It's just got this really simple label that's the Atlantic label and just block letters, Genesis. And so I kind of like the simplicity thing they were going for. I think that there's a lot of Genesis fans who only like the very beginning, of the band, and they only like, up until Steve Hackett leaves or something like that. But I think that there's some really innovative music going on. And I, for one, I was somebody that liked Abacab, but when this album came out, I liked it a lot more than Abacab. I thought that the melodic quality was better. I thought the songs were better. I thought it was more interesting. And so I would give this album I would give it a 9. I'm really pretty fond of it.
Yeah,
I mean, if I could think of something bad to say about it, it doesn't have much cohesiveness. I mean, it's not a concept album, but it kind of, the songs don't really go together very well. And I think that's a valid criticism. But I think this is a really good period of the band, and I think that this period of the band should be reassessed by those who only like
that's
the early
a problem.
period,
You're going to have
because it's pretty innovative stuff. I mean, it's super weird. Who knows why it was so popular? I mean, it's a pretty strange album. Starts out with a pretty crazy song.
Think about this, Todd. All right, these guys played prog. They can play anything they want, okay?
Right.
But the beautiful thing is we've narrowed this this band down to 3 people. The 3 core people. I'm not saying that Peter Gabriel didn't have a foot in it. I'm great for what Peter Gabriel does. But Rutherford Banks and Phil Collins can write pop songs. My whole theory is some of the best pop songs in the 80s were done by Genesis.
Yeah, and it's very clear that they did it on purpose too.
Yeah,
And this was the first album that they did where they went into the studio without anything completed,
right.
and they worked on it in real
So
time.
so
They
before.
started that sort of with Abacab, because with
Mhm.
Abacab was different because they took everything, they brought in ideas, but they took everything that sounded like Genesis and threw it out. In this album, they didn't come in with anything. They just showed up at the farm and just started.
Well, before we go to Bill, real quick, let me ask you this, Todd. You seem like you're a Tony Banks guy, but
Yeah,
who do you think Mike Rutherford? Based on what you said, it seems like you're a big fan of Mike Rutherford on this record. The
I
songs that
am.
he brought to the table.
I am, yeah. And it's interesting. People tend to blame Phil Collins for Illegal Alien, but that song is predominantly Mike's song.
That's Mike Rutherford.
So, yeah,
Phil's just an easy target.
yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, you're going to give this a 9.
I give it a 9.
Excellent. I love it. All right. Thank you, Todd. Anything else you need to
Sure.
add real quick?
No, that's it.
Perfect. Excellent.
Nice.
Bill
Good job.
Schuster, how are you? Nice to see you with that tie.
Yes.
Hey, Grant, decided to try something a little different today.
Well,
Got
you
sack-
are a professional for crying out loud. So, well, let's give us your thoughts on the 1983 album and your score out of 10.
All right, but Todd said quite a bit of the things that were already on my mind. Like Todd, this was my first new Genesis album. I got mine from Columbia House Record and Tape Club, of course, along with 90125 and a few other of that era that came out '83. Mama, yeah, Mama is a great creepy song. I'm a big fan of The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and I think Melly Mel's vocal on that is great. And I spent decades not realizing that Phil had copped that. And I thought that was just hilarious and wonderful when I found out how that happened. So now I can't unhear it because I'm always singing that song to my wife just to mess with her. It's like a jungle.
Poor thing. Poor thing.
She's put up with worse. Mama, though, the thing I found out today that I didn't know all these years, that the drum sound on Mama was not Phil. That was apparently created by Mike Rutherford using a distorted sound on a drum machine. I'd had no idea.
I didn't know that either.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's an illustration of what they were doing. And you talked about how they became a trio. I think when they became a trio, they had to become more of a team, and they really helped fill each other's gaps in the songwriting and in the playing. And I think that's really awesome. I'm a big Hackett guy. Hackett's one of my top 5 guitar players, but I'm okay that he left and did his own thing because these guys really came up with something pretty neat on their own that they wouldn't have if Steve was still there. That's all. It surprised me also to find out at the time that was their biggest hit in the U.S. up to that point, because they'd had stuff like No Reply at All and Misunderstanding and Follow You, Follow Me that for a long time I thought were bigger hits than they actually were. Mm-hmm. And frankly, a lot of those songs I like better than That's All. But yeah, that's a subjective thing. It's a pretty nice song. I like it. I like the way Tony takes the lead on that after his more mood-setting keyboards on Mama. It shows his variety quite nicely. Home by the Sea, I've got down the band are really in sync with each other. They really sound like a tight band here. I tried to single out one instrument and my ears kept wondering what one of the other guys was doing and realizing how well they're playing as a unit. And I don't think I'd ever really noticed that so much before, as much as I have the last few days re-listening to this. Especially on headphones, you really hear, well, of course, I also just said I thought it was Phil doing the drums on Mama, so who knows what the hell I'm hearing. I also, until Todd identified what Mike was playing, did not realize it's going to get better was synth pedals. But I've always loved Mike's sound on that. I think it's awesome.
I don't know for sure whether they're pedals, but it's definitely some kind of a synth thing.
Yeah,
it may have been programmed.
I think they're bass pedals. I think.
Yeah, I think they're pedals, but I'm not sure.
It sounds great either way. I like what he did with it. It's an interesting lead instrument, basically. And it's kind of subtle, which I like about it. It's not really in your face. You just really get into a groove with it.
Right.
And that's something that these guys did a lot here. I mean, they've done it many times, but they get looked at as a pop band and as a prog band, but I think people tend to overlook how much they really can get into a groove. It wasn't just Phil that had a little bit of funk and R&B in him. I think even though Tony and Mike might be the whitest guys in the world, I think they've got a little bit of funk to them.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard
I
Tony
agree.
say in interviews that his intention was to be an R&B keyboardist.
That would be
So,
very interesting.
I could
and
see
things
that.
just
though.
came out like they came out.
Mhm. Well, there you go. I don't know.
The Second Home by the Sea, it's kind of a mix of the extreme 80s and the proggy 70s, which I like. It's like the best of both worlds. It's like they're playing 70s songs with 80s sounds, basically. Illegal Alien, oh boy. I usually don't have guilty pleasures, but this is my very definition of a guilty pleasure because I have always loved this song. I think musically it's brilliant. It's catchy as hell. There's all kinds of cool things they're doing in here. And yeah, at the time I had no clue all the cringeworthy things about it. I was 15, 16 when this came out. And
But think about it, Bill. Think about it. It was a different time. No one
Oh, it
thought
It was.
anything about it.
And I think
Now
that's
you
why
look
you got
at
to
it
cut
and
him some
go,
flack for it.
now you couldn't put it out because every woke person would lose their.
Well, you could put it out. I don't think it has anything to do with being woke. I think
Depends
it's
on
or
how you
not
look
woke.
at it. Well,
It's
you
just
know.
yeah. It's just it was just that's there wasn't that wasn't a time when there were people who were trying to turn immigrants into villains, and so that just wasn't there.
There
So
you
at
go.
that time, you thought of the way people talked and the way people looked, and I think it's innocent. I think that this,
Oh,
I think
it's
it's
totally
okay to be.
innocent. Totally
I think
innocent.
it's okay
I
to
agree.
be annoyed or slightly put off by the content, and also you cut them some slack for it.
And that's
I
pretty
think
much
that's
what I
fair.
do.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you completely, Todd, that I think they had good intentions. I just think they went
Yes.
about it rather ham-fistedly.
Yes.
I've got down here, it's like
That's well put.
it says, have Phil comes across as a bull trying to draw attention to the plight of china shops while knocking dishes all about. That's essentially how I see it.
Yeah, that's good.
There you go.
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, I love the song. It's I'll say it this way: I'll play it at home all day, every day. But if I were a DJ on the radio in 2023, I wouldn't play it on the radio today.
Well, they used to play it, but you won't hear it
Yeah,
anymore.
big time. Yeah, they used to play the radio stations. When this album came out, I was living in Illinois, close to an Indiana radio station. And then I moved to Colorado, close to Denver. And stations in both markets played every single song on this album, the rock stations, other than Silver Rainbow. And they played them all a lot, whether they were mainstream pop hits or not. This album got a ridiculous amount of rock radio play.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was like that in your markets where you guys were at, but
It
Well,
was.
they played.
They used
They
to
played
play
a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah, the station in rock station in Atlanta used to play Just a Job to Do, like a lot, all the time.
yeah, that one lasted quite a few years on rock radio.
Yeah.
All right. Taking it all too hard. I just thought it was a nice breather after the exuberance of Illegal Alien. I think it's well placed there, kind of a come down. I like the song. I don't have much to say about it. It's just simple and pretty, the kind of thing that Genesis does well when they want to. Just a Job to Do. So that's a bit of a Mike showcase also. Nice rocker about a hitman. I'm kind of wondering if they were, since it was 83, if they'd heard Twilight Zone by Golden Earring and thought, hey, we could have a hit song about a hitman too. Why not? That's the trend now.
They
Maybe.
might have. I never really thought of that.
You might have something there, Bill.
See, Silver Rainbow. That seems to be the one that the hardcore prog snobs accept. If they hate the rest of the album, they will begrudgingly say, "Oh yeah, Silver Rainbow's okay." I can't make heads or tails of the lyric, which good or bad. I mean, that's kind of cool.
It's
I thought,
prog. No one can tell.
as Todd also mentioned earlier, sometimes it's good not to know what the songs are about. I've said
Yeah.
before how Martin's first Blue Oyster Cult book kind of ruined a lot of the mystery for me in BOC's mythology.
Yeah.
And that's kind of true with what you said about learning where these Genesis songs are coming from also. Let's see, I already mentioned it's going to get better musically. I really like the way it ends the album on a hopeful note. The lyrics there, it's just a general positive message. It can be pretty universal that anybody can really latch on to without needing to be part of any specific group or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite nice. A universal anthem, basically. I've always really liked that song a lot. Also
Drum
got
roll.
this is the peak of that drum sound.
I
That
agree.
it sounds dated, but as usual, I think being dated is often a good thing, and I think it is in this case for me because it takes me right back to 83, 84 in that sound, and that period that's so special to me. It's some audio time machine. And what more can I ask out of a 40-year-old album?
Yeah.
I would. I'm trying to not be overly generous with my rankings because I've had a bad habit of doing these panels and ranking things too high because I join things where I truly love whatever album we're talking about.
Yeah, but if you love it, Bill, you love it. Give us what you think. Give us your rank. Give us your rating.
All right, looking at this based on what my actual favorite Genesis albums are, I'm going to give this an 8.5.
8.5. I can't argue with that. Though Rand Kelly, if he would be watching this, he would be rolling in his grave.
Yes, he
But
would.
he's still alive.
I'm pretty sure Rand would have something with Peter Gabriel in the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't like any of this. He absolutely despises it.
If I could, I wanted to comment on something that Bill said. It really is true with this album that there are songs where you're not really thinking about who's playing what. There were parts of That's All that I used to think were Mike that are actually Tony. And that's one of the things that I think is really cool about this band is that they figured out how to do that to where, you think of a prog band and you think, oh, well, everybody has their role, but in this band, and especially on this album, it's kind of all over the place. And I think that's really cool.
I think that's why Calling All Stations. Well, for me, it didn't work so much. It took out one of the three magic ingredients.
Yeah, and it's funny. That's a topic for a whole other show, but it was mostly there, but it also felt a little wobbly, like there was a leg missing. So yeah, that's well put.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, when they were down to that trio, there was something about it. I'll leave it there. People could argue with that, disagree, but I think as a pop music writing machine, I think they were all over it. Those three guys together, something magical. All right, so we've got a 9 from Todd and 8.5 from Bill. We're going to throw it over to Tate Davis and get his ranking or his views on this record. And you're ranking out of 10. Go ahead, Tate.
Well, I will say right off the bat that I'm gonna be a little bit less kind to this album.
Oh no.
Balance is good.
However, Genesis were coming, in my view, were coming off a really, really great stride from pretty much Trespass all the way through Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Peter Gabriel leaves the band. The drummer decides, all right, I want to try singing Squonk. And
Squonk's great though.
Squonk, yeah, and the result was Trick of the Tail, which is terrific. And then they put out Wind and Wuthering, and then the live album Seconds Out, which is amazing. Hackett decides, you guys didn't turn my guitar high enough in the mix. I'm gonna do my own thing. And the three of them, Phil, Tony, and Mike, release, and then there were three, and Duke and Abacab. They start their record sales start to increase quite a bit, and they do the live album Three Sides Live, which is also really good and a really good snapshot from that era. And then the first studio effort after that is this one, and it's pretty successful, and I'll get more into that in a moment. So Mama, which is the advanced single that came out beforehand, I think when I first listened to it, it took a while for it to grab me. And when I first heard it, I'm like, this is good. And then it got to be later in the song, and I'm like, this is really good. This is really good. A great build. That's what it does for me. It builds in a really, really nice and great way. The way that songs like Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, or Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, or if you want to go on like a lesser known route, maybe like Young as the World by Budgie or something like that. And it's a great song. It really is. Phil Collins probably has one of his best vocal performances on this song, especially towards the end when he's shouting, or maybe not shouting, screaming like "Mama," awesome. And that laugh that he got from the message by Grandmaster Flash just fits really, really well, and it's got a really good Mike Rutherford guitar solo. The drum entrance kind of reminds me a little bit of In the Air Tonight, just a little bit, mainly from the groove that's played and not necessarily the fills, but yeah, no, Mama is a really good song and a pretty unusual way to start the album, but I really like songs that build, and I think Mama does that really great. That's All is a terrific single with a great funky feel to it, and another great, like, I cannot get over how great Phil sounds on this album from a vocal perspective. I mean, he always sounded terrific, but here he's really, really singing his ass off. Amazing stuff. Great piano hook from Tony Banks in that. And my favorite part of the song is the end, where it goes into the double time feel, and Mike does another really good guitar solo. He's no Steve Hackett, but he's a really good guitar player. And then Home by the Sea. Welcome to the Home by the Sea. Great mid-tempo song with another great vocal from Phil, a great synth from Tony Banks, and a mysterious outro that flows into the largely instrumental second Home by the Sea, which I'm not quite as big on. I think I didn't think it needed to be quite as long as it is. It's a little bit too synth poppy for me, but again, Phil kind of saves the day with his vocals at the end with that last verse, and I think it would have worked a lot better if it was just like maybe a 2.5 minute like addendum to the former song. But anyway, still a pretty good song. Illegal Alien, it's no fun being an illegal alien. Is silly, but I enjoy it, despite the controversial kind of notoriety that it might arise today if it was put out. I really thought it was I think it's a really fun song, and probably one of my favorite, like, really, really poppy Genesis songs. Taking It All Too Long, yeah, it's okay. It my big criticism with this album is that there's some songs on here that sound a little bit like too much of Phil Collins solo stuff. And I think this is where a lot of Genesis fans start to feel sourly among the output at this point, is because Phil's having all the success with the solo stuff, and Genesis is also having the success. It kind of almost overlaps with one another, and not so much for me in a good way. And Taking All Too Long, which is a nice song, I don't know. It's not one of my favorites, and I find it to be kind of bland. However, Just a Job to Do is one of my favorite Genesis songs. Awesome song. Again, I've got a line on you. Great Phil Collins vocal on that. I love Just a Job to Do. Just a great funky hard rocker with a great keyboard performance from Tony, and just Just a Job to Do. If there's nothing else that anyone watching this video hasn't listened to this album in a long time, go listen to Just a Job to Do, man. That is one of the best songs that the Phil Collins led era of Genesis ever did, by far. Great song. Silver Rainbow, it's okay. It doesn't, I've tried, it doesn't really grab me all that much. It's too kind of Phil Collins solo-y for me. And it's gonna get better. It's a slow, funky tune, and again, just not really all that memorable, and reminds me too much of kind of solo Phil Collins. So overall, for me, the great stuff on here is great. The not so good stuff is decent. So for me, because the great stuff is really great, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. On the strength of Just a Job to Do.
Well, 8.5 out of 10's fine.
Yeah, so overall, it's definitely not as bad of a Genesis album as people say. It's like the pro Gabriel crowd says it is, but in my opinion, it is the last really strong Genesis album, because I'm not a big fan of Invisible Touch. I'm not that big of a fan of We Can't Dance, and Calling All Stations, I think, is a pretty big misfire after Phil left. And so for me, this is like the last really good Genesis album, and this is coming from somebody whose favorite Genesis album overall is Trespass. So
wow, that means a lot.
Yeah. So it means something. And one quick thing I will say about Trespass, and I never hear anybody talk about the song. Dusk is one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard in my life. So again, if you're like a pro Gabriel Genesis fan and haven't listened to Trespass in a long time, go listen to Dusk. It is one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard in my life. Such a great song. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about though.
Right.
So overall, it's an 8.5 out of 10. And I definitely had a lot of fun listening to this again after not hearing it in a long time, and I would definitely encourage anyone watching the show to go give it a listen if they haven't.
Well, based on that review, I thought you were going to give it like a 6.
Yeah.
No,
because I think you're being pretty harsh on Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, just the song like Silver Rainbow.
Tony Banks.
It doesn't resonate with me though. That's the
what do you think that? Because that's more proggy, I would say.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say? Do you think, is it the sequencing? Do you think it's the mix of styles? Because you've got Taking It All Too Hard, which is a pop tune. Well, Illegal Alien's a pop tune, but then you still have the band dabbling in prog to some degree. They haven't totally made that break. You think
No.
that is a problem?
No, because for me it's very situational. Like the proggy parts of songs like, Just a Job to Do, or kind of even Home by the Sea as well. It works for me. I don't know. It's just I must be missing something with like Silver Rainbow, and it's going to get better, and then that Taking All Too Long.
Mm-hmm.
I might be missing something here. It's just
No, you're good.
I can't really like explain it in a way. I almost can't explain it. It's just those songs just didn't hit me nearly as hard as, like Just a Job to Do, or That's All, or Mama. And like like I was saying before, I didn't even like Mama when I first heard it, and now I really enjoy it. So I can't really definitively say that the fact that they didn't fully break away from the prog influence really hurt them, because there's still parts of this album where there's proggy moments that I really enjoy, and then there's other moments of this album that have proggy moments that just kind of go by the wayside for me.
Okay.
So
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah, I don't know. It's just it's definitely more of a subjective thing.
We all hear this stuff differently, and that's what makes things, well, it's fun talking about music because we all hear it differently.
Oh yeah.
So
Grant,
8
I was
point.
going to say and this may be on the same. This might be similar to what you're talking about, but maybe not. When these albums were coming out, I thought things like Home by the Sea and Second Home by the Sea and Domino and stuff like that, I liked them because they were proggy, but I felt like at the time that they were missing some drama that the earlier songs had, and I didn't think these songs had it. But as I get older, I actually like the proggier songs from Genesis later era even better, because I think they're weirder, and they're I think they just work better.
Like for me, my favorite era of Genesis is those first two albums. I would say first three albums where Phil Collins takes over the vocals.
Oh, those are great. Oh, yeah.
If I had to choose, I'd probably say the same thing.
Yeah, those are terrific. Yeah. And I'll even go a step further to say this. Like, I was already controversial saying that Trespass is my favorite Genesis album. I think Phil Collins sounds better on the Gabriel era stuff on Seconds Out than Peter Gabriel.
I do too. That's the definitive Supper's Ready for me. That's a really unpopular opinion. Very contrarian.
Watch out. Todd's going to set the internet on fire.
Oh my God. He did such a great job on the Gabriel stuff. Like, it's almost uncanny how great of a job he did. Like, the Seconds Out version of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Phil sings it better than Gabriel did on the studio album, which had come out 2 years before.
I agree.
I don't have I agree.
Something quick I wanted to say about That's All, because Tate brought this up. That's All is really funny because That's All sounds like R&B, and it also sounds like country. They used to introduce it as their country song, but it also swings, which is weird. And it's like, I thought about that when you sang part of it, Tate. I thought about, what, that song really does swing. And if nobody's ever heard the Phil Collins Big Band album, A Hot Night in Paris, they do a version of That's All. And after you hear that, then you'll think that That's All is jazzy and swings. So
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Tate Davis, an 8.5. So we've got a 9 and an 8 and two 8.5s. Let's throw it over to Martin Popoff and get his thoughts on this one.
All right. Well, you know how when bands do acoustic albums, right? This always struck me from the day I heard it. It sounded like an acoustic album, but all on electronic instruments. So to me, it sounds like a drums and vocals album. ballads are going to be sparse by nature, right? Mama, your first impression of this is definitely sparse. I mean, it sounds like an acoustic album, song. It's drums and vocals, right? It sounds like just a couple of instruments sort of thing. And until they hoodwink you and you realize you're in this vaulted cathedral by the end of it, right? But so on that front, there was this element of not taking the album seriously as a complete band album. It's like an album that gets played in stadiums. To me, it sounds like an album that gets played on little rinky dink kid radios and recorders like this album cover reinforces this idea of it's not really a true serious album by a band. And same with the back cover. It's like I was basically, this was, to me, it felt like they were just throwing their hat in the ring with like Rick Springfield and Huey Lewis in the News and all that kind of stuff, right? So I had that kind of going against it. But I remember also liking it a lot as well. But the main thing I liked is Mama. Mama sucked me right in. Nobody's said this, but here yet, which I'm surprised. I mean, it basically sounds like a Peter Gabriel song. It belongs on a Peter Gabriel album, right?
It absolutely
I loved
does.
It's great for that reason. It is weird. And Todd, I'll have to disagree with you that, I mean, it was all over the radio a lot. I mean, Mama was almost like the most famous song on this in a lot of ways. Although Illegal Alien as well. So I liked what you said, Todd, about if you could pick one thing you don't like about it, how it doesn't hang together. And that's definitely for sure. If I was to go through it quickly, I would say I really, I find all of side one super strong. But that's all, again, a version of sparse, a version of an acoustic band. To me, that's piano and vocals and drums. The other thing I want to mention about the drums, I did a little research and trying to find out, again, trying to pick apart who does what sort of thing. And then, you go invariably to like the Steve Hoffman forums or something like that. And people are saying that's Roland TR-808 drum machine all over. And then someone else says it's Simmons drums all over it. Right. And so you get this tight range of drum sounds between a Roland TR-808 drum machine and Simmons. And then even when he's playing acoustic, he's playing it so rigidly that it may as well be programmed anyways. So when I listen to this, I just hear a big clump of electronic drums on everything. And you don't hear that any more forcefully than on Silver Rainbow, where you're just going right. So you're getting that quite heavy all over the Home by the Sea is sort of the same thing. So again, Home by the Sea gives me that idea of an acoustic album. It sounds like drums and something else. Second Home by the Sea gives me that feeling as well of this of the idea of, it's like, okay, it's the second part of the thing, so it's just part of the same song and it's a bit of a jam sort of thing. Illegal Alien, the thing I like about Illegal Alien, taking it all too hard and just a job to do, which none of them I like a lot, but the thing I really appreciate about them is really sophisticated chord changes all the time, really neat chord changes all over the place. Like even Illegal Aliens, just going to really cool places while still being this jaunty pop tune. They're almost like fooling the general, normie public, saying here's a pop song. And then, but if you stood back, you'd go, wow, that's really cool what they're doing all over this thing. Right. And I really do like Silver Rainbow a lot. I've never considered it proggy, but I just like that the chord changes are a little darker, I suppose, on that one. And it's going to get better, so something like an It's Gonna Get Better and Just a Job to Do and even Taking It All Too Hard are in fact dressed up a fair bit, and they don't feel like this acoustic album idea or this sparse album idea. But still, just by the nature of two of those three being kind of poppy and ballad type things, I'm feeling that out of it. So what else did I want to say? So yeah, the funny thing is I can't get super excited about this album and say I love it, and I don't hate it either. And I remember getting a lot of value out of it in 1983. I was in whatever year university, third year or whatever. I was in Victoria. Totally remember playing it in Victoria in a certain house we were renting. But yeah, quite like what's going on. It doesn't make my top albums at all. I think this was on Guitar Hack. My top 5 would go absolutely Abacab for sure, Duke for sure, then Lamb's got to be there for sure, and then I start wobbling a little, and it's more like a trick of the tail, and then there were 3 sort of thing. This is quite a ways down my list. This would be below almost everything except from Genesis to Revelation, I would say, from the early stuff. And then, and then the last 3 would probably be the last 3, and from Genesis to Revelation are all fighting it out at the bottom kind of thing, right? So yeah, overall, I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Back when I used to, when this album came out, I used to be obsessive about recording all of those radio shows where they would interview people, and the call-in shows like Rockline and On the Record and all those things. And Tony Banks used to get really defensive whenever anybody said, "Why don't you play prog rock anymore?" And he used to say, we're still writing the same kind of music. And I can remember him one time getting really, really defensive and kind of put out and saying, on No Reply at All, I'm playing exactly the same thing as I'm playing on And Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. It's the same cross-handed technique. And he's like, he would very often, if somebody said something along those lines, would say, well, what we're actually doing in these songs is actually the same kinds of things that we used to do. We've just figured out how to make them more palatable.
Yeah. I just want to make one more quick point that I was trying to make, and I don't know if I forced it home. It's a little controversial, but and I was thinking of doing a podcast episode about this because it would take some explaining. But this whole thing that I've been talking about, like an acoustic record or a not really serious record, and this album cover and stuff, it felt like it was sliding into this category I have called children's music, right? So Ramones felt like children's music to me all my life. ABBA felt like children's music to me all my life. And this Genesis album feels like children's music a little bit to me. Like nursery rhymes. They're simple nursery rhymes, basically, on this album. That's kind of the point.
Mama's going to scare a lot of kids.
Yeah, but even that one being one of the most sparsest ones on it just feels like something a kid might put together.
Yeah, and I think they did that on purpose. I think they simplified on purpose. I think that was their plan.
I think that's what they did. I think what Tony Banks said, they refined everything. Come on, you can only do the same thing for so long. Yeah. These guys just did a natural progression. This is where they ended up. These guys are 3 of the best pop songwriters I've heard. I think the sequencing on this record, I think the recording quality of this record, I don't mind any of the electronic.
Pretty hard on the ears. I mean, you like this recording quality? I find it harsh. And
I like the way, I like the tonality of it.
I mean, I love Abacab. Abacab is insane. It's almost like one of the greatest
you might
sounding
say that, but
it
could be the mastering though. Depends on what version you've got. You listen on vinyl, CD. Maybe the CD's a little harsh, but there's something about this era, the tonality. Like a lot of the 70s stuff had a certain tonality. The way this record sounds, you'll never get this again. And I don't have any issues with the drum machines on it. I dig all the songwriting on this record. This is my favorite Genesis record.
Wow. Really?
I think I'd give it, out of the Genesis catalog. I know this may set the internet on fire. I mean, Rand Kelly may run screaming from his bed, but I would give this, I'd give it I'm probably going to go with Todd. Can we really give it a perfect rating? Because the Peter Gabriel people would just lose their marbles. I'll go with Todd.
Me, Grant, do you like it?
Oh, I love this record. This is my favorite Genesis record. Love it. I'll give it a 9 just so I don't set the internet on fire.
I'm going to team up with Todd. Said, which is a very quick thing. It's 46 minutes long. It's a long album.
Yeah.
For 1983.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the internet was already set on fire when I said that Phil Collins sounded better singing the Gabriel era stuff on Second Sound.
Yeah, but he does though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, you know, Tate, you're not the first person that's mentioned that. That's been stated before.
Oh,
A lot
okay.
of people love that stuff and think Phil, when he came in there, really knew how to treat the material. So you're not the
Yeah.
only one that's ever said that. So
There's also the thing, Tony has said this a bunch of times, and that's that there's singing Phil and there's screaming Phil, and Tony prefers screaming Phil. And I think that that's really interesting because I never thought of it as him screaming, but when you listen to pretty much from this album on, that's actually really what it is.
Yeah.
And
eh,
and then in the 90s when they start, doing, I guess when it actually really started in 2007 when they did that tour, he went back to being singing Phil because he couldn't scream anymore. So it's a really interesting progression, I think.
You know, I'll say one more thing. I wouldn't call this their 9012005. See, here I go again. Every single time. But
isn't it 90125?
yeah,
I
guess
could be
it is,
wrong.
yeah.
I don't know. Which
But
one
I
of
would
them?
but I would call Invisible Touch their big generator. For sure. I think
Oh, I can see that.
I think that
basically
this
get the coagulated overwrought version of this when you get to Invisible Touch.
I probably
I could see this being their 90125.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
I
but
don't
it's
know
not
about that
that
though,
far
because
off. It's
I think
not that
Abacab is their 90125.
I feel, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like
Mhm.
Abacab made more of an impression on people who didn't previously listen to Genesis, which
Yeah.
kind of makes that its 90125.
And it was more the
He's-
spirit
Oh
of
God, he's going to
discovery,
show
right? It
90125.
was an
There you go.
exciting era of discovery for them, Abacab.
Yeah.
And this isn't, they're really not doing anything all that brand new on this, right?
Well, it's like what Tony Banks said. They've refined it even more. They refined it probably too much on Invisible Touch, even though I think there's some great tracks on Invisible Touch.
When Invisible Touch came out, I thought it was stronger than this. I'm not sure if I still feel that way now, but at the time I thought it was stronger. I thought it's mainly because I thought it sounded better. But I wanted to say something about what to kind of jump off of one of the things that Martin said. The song "That's All," I don't have any idea whether that's electronic drums, whether that's programming Simmons or acoustic drums. To this day, I still don't know. I think when you listen to it, I can kind of hear all three of those.
I thought
So
they were
it's-
using Lynn drums on this record.
Well, they use the Lynn drum for the drum machine sound in Mama,
Oh,
and then they
okay.
use Simmons on Home by the Sea, and then there's
Okay.
Simmons and Silver Rainbow. But that's all. I'm not sure. I think it's acoustic drums, but it could be kind of like that whole thing. Can't tell whether it's Tony or Mike. I can't tell whether that's real drums or some kind of hybrid. But anyway,
They
I
were
just wanted to say
sneaky
that
on that.
'cause-
What time
yeah.
is it?
It's Genesis.
It's Genesis. And well, I love it. So that's all that matters. All right. Well, let's do our calculations. We've got a 9, an 8.5, an 8.5, a 6, and a 9, and we come up with an 8.2. So based on our dark horse rankings, I'm going to say that this would be considered a dark horse record. It could have ranked way worse. Who knows what it could have came up as, you know?
I really wish Rand was here so we could have heard his thoughts on this one, frankly.
You really don't want to hear Rand's thought on it.
I've heard Rand talk about this album, and if I remember correctly, he likes it.
Hey, cool.
Yeah, I think he does.
Well, I don't know. You never know with Rand.
I think Rand likes this album the way that Martin likes Kilroy was here from Styx.
I don't know if Rand would give it a 0 because it is Genesis and he loves Genesis. But yes, 0 for Kilroy. That was quite an episode. The internet did survive though. It didn't break anything. Well, does anybody have anything else to add before we wrap this up? We've give this record an 8.2, kids.
We were thorough.
I think very thorough.
I guess you could say that's all.
That's it. All right, kids, let's wrap it up. So I want to thank Todd, Bill, and Tate, and of course Martin Popoff. Another Dark Horse episode in the can. So God knows what's next. Who knows what's coming up, but there's plenty down the road. So please like, subscribe. If you'd like to be on one of these panels, we have a Patreon link below. You could be on these panels. If you don't want to be on the panel, we have a Ko-fi. We'd love for you to send us a coffee or a pint or something. And we also like donuts because we do go live every Wednesday and we have different topics every week. So right now we're talking about a lot of album covers and we'd love for you to show up and we would love for you to make a comment.
Okay.
All right, everybody, we'll see you and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.